Hello to the gamers. Even though this isn't much of a gaming video, this is going to be one of many videos I'm sure you're going to see over today, tomorrow, etc. of my 2024 presidential election prediction. And also a good recap on what I think the state of the race is and basically what the campaigns have done so far. It's been surely a very interesting election, and let's just go through memory lane a little bit because it has been, just wow. It has been a fucking whirlwind, and I'm so happy that it's almost over. Of course, honestly, this really all started when Trump was getting prosecuted, all his court cases and stuff like that. This was in 2023, and we got, of course, this iconic photo of his mugshot. I think one of the cases in Georgia. This is what it's from, and yeah, I think that was the whole news cycle of late last year, early this year was all the court cases and things that were going on. One of them ended up where he was found guilty and he's still awaiting sentencing, and I think that's set to occur after the election. But again, if he wins, I don't know how that plays in. And of course, then we get another. I don't know how he does it. Even in court drawings, he looks like a fucking meme, and he just the photo ops on this guy are incredible. And of course, this things really started shifting into gear once we had the first presidential debate, which ended up really changing the entire race in ways that we should have seen coming. And just poor old Joe Biden looking confused and allegedly sick and just not being there at all. A performance so bad that he had to be replaced, but not before the other most, I would argue, the most iconic photo of the election, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I mean, again, this photo is like you couldn't ask for a better photo. It is just insane. I don't know how like turning an assassination attempt into one of the most legendary campaign photos of all time. Yeah, like this is going in the textbooks. Like I don't see any other way besides that. Then of course, the subject of my first YouTube video, the Trump-Harris debates, and this one really solidifies it. I don't think Trump won that one, but also really didn't do much damage apparently. No one really talks about it, at least today. I mean, the news cycle ever since then has been a cycle of just I don't even know what. I mean, even look over the last week. There's been at least 50 different stories of the day in like 7 days. So I this isn't even in anyone's mind anymore. Again, though, I think the thing that I observed during when I was talking about this in my first video is Harris did not really define herself. She attacked Trump a lot and, getting under his skin, which she definitely succeeded at. But again, even we're what like a month or two away from this, and I don't even remember what she said except the whole I grew up in a middle class family, which has now just become a joke. In the meantime, we had RFK uh, coming on and endorsing Trump, ending his campaign, and apparently joining his next administration if he wins. And again, pretty damn cool photo, whatever they did with the light show in the background. And this changed the whole I think dynamic of the race because you got him coming in, you got uh, Tulsi Gabbard coming in, you have Vivek coming in, all these people from all walks of the spectrum, former Democrats, Republicans, independents. It's just kind of changing the entire structure of the Republican Party in ways that no one even saw coming. And on the inverse of this, you have the Cheneys, a bunch of neocons, old school Republicans joining the Kamala Harris's side, which again we're in the middle of a restructuring in our political parties, and it's just a very interesting time. We are living through history, whether we like it or not. Then the vice presidential debate, a lot more cordial, a lot nicer. JD Vance came off amazing. I think honestly this was, from what I've seen, the beginning of the end for the Kamala Harris campaign. The alleged support that she had all throughout when she was installed as the candidate up until here, this is really where it started falling off. and Trump started like gaining in the popular vote and things like that. I don't know if it was because of this or it just happened to be timing. Then of course another legendary photo. I don't know how he does it. The whole McDonald's photo op that for some reason really got under people's skin, and I think people just talked about this for almost a week straight, just raging at the fact that this happened. And what was this, like 2 weeks ago at this point? And then it spun into all the, Hitler, fascist, like the amount of stories that were coming out after this where I could not even keep up. And I really wasn't keeping up because I was too busy playing Black Ops 6, which is, a great time to do that because being on the internet over the last week, I imagine has been absolute hell. I've been pretty much staying away from all kinds of political discussion because any news story, anything over the last week has just been like there there's no truth. The only intention is to either get one side to vote and show out more than the other side. That's every news item from everywhere is only that. And I'm so happy for it to be almost done so I can actually use the internet again and not be just bombarded with horse shit. And then the one to cap it all off, again, the king of photo ops, so fast come up with this because the whole garbage comments that a comedian made at his New York rally that everyone got so offended about. Biden comes out and calls Trump supporters garbage, even though a lot of people ran cover for him and inserted an apostrophe that wasn't there, which doesn't make sense even with the apostrophe. And the White House stenographers even came out and said, hey, yeah, they wanted this edited to make it look less bad for him. And I mean, I've never heard of the White House stenographers. If they're coming out and saying bad shit, then what the hell's going on here? And now we arrive to. I'm recording this on November 4th, about 24 hours before the polls close. And in my mind, there are three ways that this is going to play out tomorrow. Two of them give Trump the win, one of them gives Kamala Harris the win. And really, that does play into my mind where I think I'm about 60-40 in favor of Trump clinching this election, just based on polling, other data like party registration nationally and in the swing states, the early voting data that is showing Republicans way up. Now, they're either just turning out more low propensity voters or they're cannibalizing their election day vote. This would just mean that Democrats would have to historically turn out on election day in ways they have never done before. It could happen. It could happen. I mean, it really comes down to, will abortion energize the female Democratic base so much that the polling is just not accounting for that whatsoever? And the early voting is not accounting for that whatsoever. And they're really going to show up on election day. That is what the Democrats are hinging on. And even in that scenario, I think it is a very, very close win for Kamala Harris. So let's go to the map here. Good old 270 to win. Always love playing with this. Now I'm going to do some things before I lay out the Kamala Harris victory. Because just in terms of polling and early voting, I think some states are actually already a lock. Right? Okay, first off, we're going to color everything here red and blue because I'm not going to care about margins specifically. I don't know. This is going to be an either or. So, just, if you're red, you're taking home red. If you're blue, you're voting for Democrats, okay? So, just based on polling, very consistent polling, accurate polling, and early voting, I think already this is the map going into election night. Purely, right? 100%. Now I could be way off here, but this is already, in my opinion, what it is. I think we'll know this pretty early on. I think once we see the numbers come in Georgia and North Carolina, it'll be quite obvious about how this election is going to go. If these are lower, then Kamala Harris has a really good chance of winning. But the Arizona, let's go state by state here. So I'm not just making, random claims. Let's go to Arizona here. Gave up Trump 2.7. Look at the history. He has pretty much been up the entire time, except right around the DNC. even against Biden. Look at that. Look at that lead. Incredible. And, in recent weeks, it has opened from like a 1.6 to a 2.7. And polls always consolidate around the end. And yeah, there's only 2 polls that even show a tie or Harris being ahead. Now, we take a look at the historic polling and the historic error. The average here is a 4.0. The real results were a 3.5. So a 0.5 in Trump's favor. They overestimated him by just a bit. Here, Biden plus 0.9. Final results plus 0.3. A 0.6 in Biden's favor. So they underestimated Trump's support here. So basically, in the past 2 elections with Donald Trump on the ballot, they have been within half a point in either direction. So this would be a Trump 2.2 or Trump 3.2. The only way that Harris wins this is if the polls have significantly underestimated Kamala Harris supporters by margins that we haven't seen in the last 2 elections. And I know some people are going to say I should be looking at the 2022 midterms, and I agree, but midterms are very different, and for some reason the polling definitely turns out differently when Donald Trump is on the ballot. In 2022 and 2018, I think the polls overestimated the Republican support and underestimated Democrats. I think both times they tried to weight the electorate towards the presidential elections because I think just the fact that Donald Trump is on the ballot brings out voters that aren't usually there. And they tried doing this both times, and they failed. They overestimated the Republican support because Trump wasn't there to bring those kinds of voters out. That's why, at least in terms of Arizona, I am pretty confident in that. Let's go to Nevada. Trump is up 1 in the aggregate. I will say I take a lot more stock in the Alice Intel poll. Nationally, they were the most accurate one in 2020. I would hope that they have brought their accuracy to the states as well. And even if they have, they also underestimated Trump's support by about 2 points. Now, if we look at these, they were actually oversampling Trump voters in 2016. And they were actually spot on in 2020. Definitely a weird scenario where we have one poll, where we have both polls kind of, overestimating Trump support and one being kind of on brand. But it definitely seems that they improved their polling in the state over time because they were way off here and they were pretty on point here. And 2.4 both times, it seems pretty accurate. Now, when you take the early voting into account, which has actually been kind of disastrous for Democrats, the Republicans are leading in early voting for the first time in Nevada, like ever, even in Clark County, which is, the biggest Democrat county in Nevada. And, I mean, this is probably one of the closest ones. This could go either way, but it does seem that Trump does have the lead. I mean, with early voting and the Alice Intel poll and the fact that, I mean, it's kind of been a dead heat the entire time, but over the last month, it's been there for Trump. And again, it breaks into a wider margin over here. That's why I think I'm pretty confident. And the fact that it seems the entire Sunbelt itself, it's not just the fact that it's Nevada, it's also Arizona and North Carolina and Georgia that are consistently going to Trump or breaking to Trump. And the Sunbelt, they vote together. It's like the Rust Belt. It's the same thing. Now we bring ourselves to Georgia. Georgia. And, well, the story here is pretty easy. The polls are actually, like, on point here in both years. If you look at 2016, 4.8. Real, 5.1. Underestimated him by 0.3, but otherwise that's pretty accurate. 2020, Trump plus 1.0. And then it was plus 0.3. Again, not super accurate, but what, as a 1.3 difference? That's not terrible. Out of all the other swing states, this doesn't seem so bad. Then here we have a 1.7 to Trump. And this has been consistent. Again, it got a little tight here, but, like, look at that. That is a consistent lead, pretty much. I can't believe that the demographics here Or I really can't believe that the fundamentals of the race have changed that much for this to be way off. And also, if you look at the early voting, the demographics, it is incredible for Republicans and it is terrible for Democrats, especially in the urban areas and the black vote. They are just not turning out the way that you would want to for a Harris victory. And the only poll that has Harris in the lead doesn't even have a margin of error. So I don't even know what to think about that. And the only other one is a tie. So again, it seems to me, and there's also an Atlas Intel poll of Trump +2. Again, seems roughly around accurate. I just do believe that Georgia is. Now, at long last, we come to North Carolina. This one has given me some pause. It is interesting to me that it is this close, but it does seem that every election, it seems that the Republicans are doing worse than they are, and yet at the end they pull out the lead. Right? If we go to 2016, it was only up by 0.8, and was actually won by 3.6. If you look at 2020, it was up by 0.2, won it by 1.3. Again, his margins were tight in both years. His margin is basically double in the aggregate right now. So, unless there's, again, for some reason the methodology has completely shifted to underestimate Kamala Harris voters, I don't see how this actually goes to her. And again, with the early voting data as well, it matches every other swing state. Strong for Republicans, not strong for Democrats. So, all these four, I think, are pretty much in the bag. Unless there's a massive turnout collapse on election day, I think these are good. And you also even saw the Kamala Harris campaign pull out their advertising in North Carolina over the last week. Now, I don't know if that's because they're confident or because they're like, there's no way. But every election, there's been the whole North Carolina's going blue because it looks really tight. And then at the end, Trump overperforms both times. I wouldn't expect it to be any different here. The only variable might be the hurricane, but it seems that the Trump campaign is able to get those voters out. That's the base case here. If we look at a Kamala Harris victory, this is what it's going to look like. She's going to win the Rust Belt. Unlikely, in my opinion. It really does all hinge on abortion. And this really would be a miracle considering Kamala Harris is much less of a Rust Belt vibe than Joe Biden was. So if Joe Biden barely carried these, I would be shocked if she did. I would have more expected her to carry the Sunbelt than these. But this absolutely could happen. This would be her narrow way to victory. This would, I mean, look at this. This is as close as it can get without being a goddamn deadlock. So she needs to win all three, right? And that is just hinging on a certain coalition showing up. And we're not really seeing that in the early voting, unfortunately, either for her. The urban areas are way down. The black votes are way down. There is a narrative that is developing that the women voters are outpacing male voters. However, I mean, yes, it's true. Right now, women are leading men in the voting. In the early voting and mail-in, they are leading. However, if you look at 2016, 2020, 2022, women always outperform men in the early voting. In fact, the margin now is less than it was in 2022 and 2020. So actually, there's less of an advantage towards women in this election than 2020 and 2022 in the early vote so far. So I wouldn't really count that as a good thing, especially the fact that Republicans are also early voting so much. I'd argue that's actually a really, really bad sign if Republicans are like tied or almost leading, and women are leading by like 10 points. That means one of two things. Either, again, women are just voting earlier in general, which means that the election day is going to be more men which tends to skew red, which is so that's terrible. Or B, on the Republican side, it's about 50-50 split, men, women, and it's just women that are voting Democrat a lot, which means that men who are Democrat are just not voting, which is terrible. That's also not a good sign. Let's take a look at some of these Rust Belt states. Right now, Wisconsin, Harris is up by 0.4. This has been one of the closest states in this entire election cycle. You have a tie, a +2, a +1, a +1, a +1, a +2, a +3, a tie, +6, questionable, +1, +1, tie. It's close. It's basically a toss-up here. It could go either way. However, I would like to remind the viewer of these pollings. Wisconsin, for some reason, is the hardest state to poll in the Rust Belt. Clinton was up 6.5, and Trump won it by 0.7 in 2016. That is a 7.2 underestimation of Trump. That is insane. 2020, Biden up 6.7, only won by 0.7. That is a 6-point swing. I mean, come on, you have New York Times, CNN up Biden plus 11. How are you still putting polls out after this much of a miss? So the fact that we have a 6.5, a 6.7, and it's only 0.4 right now, again, unless there's a complete, if there's any left-leaning bias, which here there is most likely to be, because this is the one that has been consistently the most off in the last two elections, and Trump is winning this. Unless they're somehow super accurate this time. It's possible, but again, unlikely. But I do think it's going to be close regardless, because even Atlas Intel has a +1. And we turn to Michigan. Harris is up 0.6. Most recent two polls have Trump up a +2 and a 0.1, a tie and tie. A bunch of good Harris polls recently. The tide seems to be shifting somewhat. But again, this is so close. This is 0.6. This is effectively a toss-up. And again, underestimated Trump in 2016, underestimated Trump in 2020. If it's anything like those, Trump wins again. And this has the added fun part of the Muslim population not voting for Harris whatsoever. They are breaking like half for Jill Stein because of the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. So, I mean, that could swing it. That could swing it either way. But again, I don't know. It all depends on, are women going to come out and vote for abortion? It's possible. That's why I'm saying this is her best chance of victory. Now we come to Pennsylvania, which I would argue is the most important state. And it is close. But I think this is probably Trump's strongest state, maybe next to Wisconsin. I mean, I don't even know how to say this without sounding crazy. I think the fact that he got shot in Pennsylvania just gives him the win by God-given right. But yeah, again, tie, 1, 2, 1, whatever. It is close. It is a dead heat. This is where the most amount of money has been going in. And the early vote here doesn't look great for Republicans, but it looks better than it did in 2020. Because I think they only have mail-in. They don't really have in-person early voting as much. So it's just really going to matter on election day. And again, the same trend we see is that urban areas like Philly and Pittsburgh are down, rural areas are up, black turnout is down, which overall does not bode well for Kamala Harris. And again, this is the state where they underestimated Trump both times by around 2.8 here. They actually got it right in 2020 though. So, yeah, within the margin of error. This could go either way. But again, it depends on, are women going to turn out for abortion over everything else? That's what matters. So that's why this map can look like this. Now, here's another scenario. This gives me a Trump win, but in the same way, this is going to be a very close Trump win. So I lied when I said there's 3 scenarios. There's multiple. I don't think this next one's going to be likely, but I think this is the Trump campaign's like play to win, right? say Kamala Harris is doing even better in all of these states. We give her half the Sun Belt. Would be terrible. I don't think this is gonna happen. This could happen. They have Georgia and North Carolina unlock. They just need PA, and that's it. That's the election. All of it. The rest of it doesn't even matter. Now I'll show you why this is important. In 2020, this was not a valid option. With this combination of states, you could not have won. But the changes in the electoral votes, the migration of people all across the country, have now made this a viable path to victory. Which I think that is what they are trying to do. But again, I do not think this is likely just because the Rust Belt likes to vote together and so does the Sun Belt. So if this happens, then this happens. And then Kamala Harris wins again. So it's definitely possible, but that means Kamala Harris needs to basically sweep everything. Because I do think this is the map right now. She needs to win the entire Rust Belt. If Trump wins one, it's over. It doesn't even matter. Like, boom, that's it. Oh, is the polling way off in Wisconsin? It's done. Oh, are a bunch of Muslims not going to vote for Kamala Harris? It's done. And this is done. And then again, now I'm gonna transition into what I think, just based on the polling and the early voting, the most likely scenario for a Trump win is just this. It just makes sense. A 312 win. This is, in my opinion, the most likely scenario here. I would not be surprised to see this whatsoever. Again, I don't know about the specific margins in these states, but this seems extremely likely. Now, for fun, let's do the last scenario in which this election actually isn't even close at all. Because, as we can see, the Trump versus Harris national is literally a fucking tie right now. A dead tie. Trump was up for a while in the aggregate, as we can see, but now it is a tie. But again, this is when you see everything consolidate. Now, Atlas Intel, the most popular, has a Trump +2. They've been pretty consistent over the last month or two of a Trump +2 to +3 range. We have the Gallup Party Identification Poll that has been pretty much accurate for the last 40 years in determining within like 1 point what the popular vote's going to be. If he is winning the popular vote, I don't think it's going to even be close. If they are underestimating Trump support at all here, it's going to be a Trump like 3, 4, 5 popular vote win. Again, they overestimated Clinton support by 1 in 2016. In 2020, they overestimated Biden support by even more. So who's to say they actually fixed their stuff this time? Even Atlas Intel was +2 in Biden's direction last time. And Trump has never, ever been on the ballot being this strong going into election day. So it is very possible that this isn't close at all. I mean, it could be just like how the Reagan and Carter election was apparently very close until the end, until like literally election day. And they say that's because of some, news stories and things that were going on at the time. I don't know. I think it is in, at least now, the polling industries and the news and everything, it is in their best interest. It is in both campaigns' best interest to make it seem as close as possible. One, money, the ratings, the hype. For the campaigns, they want their people to go out and vote. You don't want to see a landslide because then both sides are not going to go out and vote. Like, oh, if Trump is up 20 points, I'm not going to go and vote. He's got in the bag. Oh, Trump is up 20 points. I'm not going to vote for Kamala because there's no point. She's going to lose. So again, there is a symptom here that it seems like everyone just really wants a coin flip here. And they could be underestimating in either direction. I've already talked as to why I don't think they're underestimating in Kamala's direction, just because they've never done that before on a presidential election. And even in that scenario, I think she just barely wins. She might not even win in that scenario. I know there was the Iowa poll recently that came out, and that has kind of thrown a wrench into things for me, considering they, broke away from most polls in the last two elections, but were accurate because they were showing more Trump support than most other polls, and they were pretty spot on. But now they're showing Kamala Harris being +3 in Iowa. And one, I mean, you can be accurate 2 times and then miss two. I can't see your cross tabs. I can't see how you weighted your polls, who's actually responding. I mean, I saw a photo of one of the questions of, did you ever support Donald Trump in your entire life? And it was like 90% no, which means this is like, I don't know what your sample is here, because that's not accurate whatsoever. So I don't know what that pollster is doing. Apparently she's retiring in January, so that might have something to do with it, where she's just like bouncing out. Maybe she's got money. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know why you would ruin your credibility. That's why I have to take it somewhat seriously. But again, if that Iowa poll is accurate, then it's going to be a Kamala Harris sweep. But that all hinges on one poll. A Trump sweep is everything else. So let's take a look. What can happen in a Trump sweep? Well, Virginia can go. We have some polls with only Harris +2, Harris +2. It is very close here. This is like, it shouldn't even be this close. And again, if they are underestimating Trump support here, and it is a complete blowout in the likes of which we haven't seen in a while. Like, I don't think even if there was a Reagan-esque like sweep that he's getting like more than 400 electoral votes. That's just not possible in today's climate. There's some like this solid blue ones that are going to go. Like Virginia, that could happen, especially since their governor. It's definitely a different kind of state than we're used to. Minnesota, even though Kamala Harris's running mate is from Minnesota, the polls here are also kind of closing in, right? Only a 4.9. We have a +3. We have a +3. You don't want to see that in one of your solid blue states. That is super close. I mean, Clinton only won it by like zero point 0.8 in 2016. It's definitely possible this flips if everything goes Trump's way. New Mexico. This is one as well, because this would just mean something is just everyone's going right. This is kind of close. It's not that competitive now, but this would be the closest one. It could flip potentially. Like a 0.1% win. It would be super close, but that could happen. And then, of course, New Hampshire as well. New Hampshire is one that Republicans have been wanting to flip for a while. And, I mean, only a 3.5 advantage here. And Rasmussen has a +1, +3. Like, these are close. This could happen too. And New Hampshire gives a nice buffer for for Trump. Because say Minnesota, go to this, go to this and this and this. If he gets New Hampshire, he doesn't even need the Rust Belt to win. But if he's getting New Hampshire, he's getting the. If he's getting New Hampshire, he's getting the Rust Belt. Let's add all this back in. I think this is the best case scenario. If there's, this would be equivalent to a modern day landslide. I mean, even for fun, you can add in Maine at large. You could even add in Nebraska too, which I don't think will happen. But again, this would be crazy. I think any more than this would be um, crazy. I think if he got any more votes than this, then the Democrats need to take a good, long, hard look at themselves. And I'd be shocked that like a voice or a vocal minority of like 20% has managed to seem like 50%. This is the max. This would be Donald Trump on a really good night. And then, in conclusion, I think the most likely scenario is this. This is what the polling at least indicates to me. This is what I think I've been set on for a while. And then I think if Kamala Harris has a great night, she can do this. And if she has an amazing night, she could do this. I mean this. This is her path to victory. She needs to win the Rust Belt, all three of these states. The thing is, if Virginia looks close, if New Hampshire looks close, if Minnesota looks close, then she's not winning these. So, on election night, what I would say, look for Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. See how the margins are going to run up in Florida because those results come in fast. Same with Georgia. See how the margins start coming in, especially in the more urban counties. Same with North Carolina. See how those start coming in. If these are like looking good, like really good for him, then I think he's got probably Pennsylvania locked up, and then he wins. Like you don't even need the next set of polls to close. But I just hope that it is simple. I hope I like. I mean, of course, if you support Kamala Harris, this would be really good for you. But I really hope this isn't the map. I just do hope that it's not this close, regardless of who wins, because if it is literally one or two electoral votes away from it flipping either way, and if the margins in Pennsylvania are that close, I mean, we saw what happened last time. This isn't going to be pretty. I wouldn't wish this upon any of us living here. So I do hope it's a decisive blowout in one direction or the other, just because I'm nervous. I am. I'm nervous about what happens either way. Anyway, if you haven't voted, go out and vote. Exercise your right. I think everything's going to be okay no matter what. This is just my prediction. I'm just putting this out here just for posterity and for the record. I want to see if I'm right at all. I think that'd be pretty cool if I'm anywhere near accurate. I mean, I don't have any like degree in this. I don't do this for a living. It's just it's good. It's cool for me. Um, Again, everything's going to be okay, and please just don't get too invested. No matter what, don't. This isn't going to be the end of the world. No matter what happens. Stay safe.